Welcome to the Atlanta Real Estate Podcast, the show where we explore the stories behind the people and personalities that make up Atlanta real estate. We interview top producing agents, mortgage lenders, builders, contractors, investors, and everyone in between to share their secrets of success and meet the key players driving the Atlanta housing market. I am your host, Mike Lacey. I'm a top producing real estate agent with Sotheby's International Realty, in addition to being a real estate investor in the Atlanta area. In today's episode, you will hear the story of Ovais Inamullah. Ovais is a vascular neurologist for the Wellstar health system. And aside from owning a few properties around the Atlanta area, he's also one of the smartest people I know when it comes to investing and most things in life. In this episode, we are going to cover how Ovais was able to buy a home for free, not once, but twice, and actually get paid at closing, and also dive into topics such as Airbnb, medium-term rentals, traveling nurses, a lot of different real estate investing strategies. So if you are interested in any of those topics, you are going to love today's episode. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Ovais, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm very, very excited. So I want to start with your career as a doctor and kind of get that background. When did you finish medical school and really start your career?
Yeah, so I finished med school in 2016 and then started residency at Duke University in North Carolina in a little town called Durham. So I did 4 years of residency, that's one of internal medicine, and 3 years of neurology, just general neurology, and then I subspecialized. I did a subspecialization fellowship year in vascular neurology at Duke as well, and then in the summer of 2021, I finished my training and moved to Atlanta and took a job with Wellstar here in Atlanta.
Okay, awesome. So how many total years of med school was that?
It was 4 years of med school and then 5 years of medical training through residency and fellowship before getting the actual job.
Wow. So 4 years undergrad, 4 years med school, 5 years of residency, 13 years post high school of education.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Wow. Okay. And is that typical for someone that's becoming a doctor? Is it usually more or less?
No, that's pretty standard. There are some specialties that require less or more residency and fellowship years. So neurology is 4 years of residency. Internal medicine and family medicine, which are the more classics, are 3 years of residency, so they're one less. But something like general surgery would be 5 years of residency. So it just depends on what you decide to specialize in.
Okay, interesting. One thing that has always fascinated me is not only that you made that commitment to be in education that long and sort of, delay starting your career, but then I'm curious, what is your investing mindset coming out of that? Because, now you land a job that's probably paying pretty well, but you've got a lot of student debt. You're, 30? How old are you at that point?
33. Oh, I'm 33 now.
Okay, so when you're finally get this job.
I was 31. Yeah, 2 years ago.
And so you probably want to own a home and do all this stuff. What was your sort of financial mindset of here's the sequence or the milestones of how I want to start progressing my financial life?
Yeah, it was a long time in training, and I got to admit, before I became an attending, there wasn't much of an investment mindset. I would just, whenever we went out to dinner, went out to party or anything like that, I'd just say it's on the government. We're taking out loans. The government's paying for everything. Don't worry, everyone. Buy rounds for everyone there at the spa and just say, don't worry, the government's got it. Yeah, the investing mindset beforehand was terrible. I mean, they don't teach you anything in med school and in residency. They don't train you. They don't prepare you. So I really had no idea. But for a long time, I was single too. So I was just probably living a little bit minimally. I was just living in an apartment, and other than the occasional partying or traveling, I didn't really have that hefty of a budget. But the loans definitely accumulated quite a bit. I had the actual medical school loans, and then there's private loans that you can get to sort of facilitate moving and other stuff. So it accumulated, and I wasn't really thinking about the long term. But then I got married. I was getting towards the end of residency. I was starting the process of becoming an attending. And that really changes the way you think about things. I had to think about the long term. Then I had a child. That really makes you think about the long term. And to try to get a little bit more serious, as I was starting to become an attending, there are certain things we needed as a family. We needed to live in a home. We needed to be financially stable. And I needed to get things more in order. So I really started to buckle down, do my research, and create a plan. You really need a plan to figure out the appropriate steps to move forward so that you can meet your financial goals. You need to have financial goals. You need to have a plan in order to be able to meet them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I guess even as of today, what's sort of your philosophy about paying off student debt versus investing money in assets that are going to grow?
Yeah, so there are certain plans in place for facilitating payoff for student debt if you work for the appropriate types of hospitals or hospital systems. So there's something called PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, that every physician should be aware of. But I don't think it's actually exclusively for doctors. It's kind of for most grad school programs. But if you work in a nonprofit sector, which a lot of hospitals are, and residency and fellowship are included for 10 years, they pay off your loans. So as long as you stick to that plan, you keep making your payments consistently for that 120 months, they can forgive, have loan forgiveness for a large portion of your loans. But that private loan that I took, that was probably not a good idea financially because there's really high interest rates on those. So as soon as I finished training and started the job, the first priority was, hey, I know it's a big cut out of your cash and the amount of money you have in your pocket, but you got to get rid of this private loan sort of immediately because those interest rates are really going to accumulate quickly. So I made a big payment to get rid of that private loan. That was really tough initially, but 100% was the right decision. And then with the government loans, you can sort of play it easily month by month, just try to pay it off as minimally as you can until you qualify for that 10-year loan forgiveness. And if you're outside of nonprofit, then there's more like 20-year loan forgiveness programs. And there's a lot of companies like Doctors Without Quarters. There's something called Tuition.io that can help you create your plan for loan forgiveness so that you know how much money you have left over every month for saving, investing, enjoying, house rental, and that type of stuff. Because a lot of investing, financial planning is really about creating your budget and knowing what your budget is.
That's fascinating. So just to make sure I understand it right, with these loan forgiveness programs, as long as you're making the minimum payment each month for 10 years, whatever your balance is after 10 years, they're like, that's fine, the rest is gone.
Yeah, it's forgiven, so 120 straight months. Now, that forgiven amount is still taxable income, so you have to pay taxes on when it's forgiven after 10 years. But, that's a fraction of what you would have to pay otherwise. So it's a really helpful program that's in place. Although some of us keep praying, please, Joe Biden and the Democrats, just forgive all of our loans immediately. It'd be really nice. Although even they just want to do like 10, 20,000, which for a medical student or medical loan is, that's pissing in the ocean. That's a drop in the bucket. That's not really that big in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, but the answer to your question, yes. If you consistently make those payments for 120 months, then your loans get forgiven. And that includes the amount of time where loans have been furloughed by the government over the course of COVID. So for the past 2.5 years, my payment has been $0 a month, which has been really nice. Not most doctors get that opportunity, not to look at a silver lining of COVID, but it's allowed for there to be more money for real estate investments and other things.
That's so interesting. I never knew that. And so there's really not much incentive then to like pay down the debt faster or try to, get it eliminated as quickly as possible if you're playing this loan forgiveness game.
Yeah, only if you go into a private job. Like if you start a practice for yourself or join a private company that's for profit, and then you have to pay off your entire loan, which sometimes you can get a higher salary if you go that direction. But then your priority is, hey, I really got to get rid of these loans. But you always got to look at the percentages when you're looking at these types of things. So let's say your loan has 3 or 4%, interest rate in terms of accumulating, but you have somewhere you can put your money where it's going to be 6 or 7% appreciating. Then it makes more sense to have your money appreciate at 6%, 7% instead of paying off extra towards the loan. But it's not always that sort of black and white and that clear. You can't always predict how well your money's going to appreciate. So the priority, it really is getting rid of the loans because it affects you in so many ways. You go in to buy a house, you try to buy a car, they're looking at your debt sort of income ratio and your balance. And so it affects your ability to make those financial purchases you want and get those assets that you're interested in.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. I think one thing related to all this that everyone needs to know about is if you're in the medical field, there are loans specifically for doctors and medical professionals. And the reason being, you're a unique borrower type, right? You might have a lot of debt, all this student loan debt, but you have one of the most secure industries that you could possibly be in as far as your job goes, and that tend to be somewhat higher income as well. So there are loan types out there that are specifically for these people that are pretty advantageous. And I know that this was something you took advantage of. We sort of teased at the intro that you were able to buy a house for free. So obviously we both were involved in that. I was able to help you out. But do you want to tell everyone how you were able to get paid at closing?
Oh yeah, these were sweet. And I'm really thankful that Mike sort of introduced me to this process and helped me fully understand it. If you do get a realtor in your life, make sure it's someone you learn from because it can make big differences down the road. But yeah, these doctor loans are awesome. Doctors by definition work longer and have more stable incomes with less highs and lows, less chance of losing their employment and things like that. Obviously, we don't have the ceiling that a lot of other experimental professions have, but the long-term financial stability is relatively there, and banks know that. So they want loans from doctors and dentists and medical professionals. And so I have done a couple of purchases now through a doctor loan program. using banks like Regions has one, Synovus had a really good program, as well as Truist Bank here in Atlanta, all people that offer really excellent doctor loans programs, and there's a couple of advantages. Number one is lower interest rates. So they offer lower interest rates to physicians, which is super awesome. You know, the interest rate market really went up recently. So the more recent house we did, to be able to get that interest rate reduction was super helpful. And two is the low down payments. You know, coming right out of residency, I've told you what my financial management was before becoming an attending. It wasn't fantastic, and I really wanted to save as much cash as possible in my pocket. Because that cash now is way more valuable than in 10 years after I've had an attending salary for 10 years. So I really wanted to put as little down as possible moving forward in the real estate project. And these doctor loans, if you are under a certain cap, you know, they sort of have their limits of where they want to do it. But if you're under a certain cap, you can get them for 0% down. And then like the next level up would be like 5%. And the next level up would be 10% as the houses get a lot more expensive. But those caps are pretty healthy. So you can get a really nice house, especially here in the metro Atlanta area. So when I first moved down and we did the first project with Mike, and we saw a lot of houses in the process. That's another thing. You got to get a realtor that doesn't get exhausted quickly. Mike was great. We saw a lot of houses together. But when we eventually decided and moved forward, I was able to get approved for a 0% loan. But not only that, if you have a creative realtor, he really knows how to manipulate closing costs in your favor. And so Mike was able to make it so that they basically not only covered for the closing costs, but you know, I had given a little bit of money initially as part of the initial part of the process. I forgot that term.
Earnest money.
Yeah, earnest money. Yes, I gave some earnest money. And so when we went in actually for closing, and it was 0% down, they handed me the keys to the house, but also a check for several thousands of dollars. And they're like, the house is yours now. So that's very atypical to get paid and also just get the keys at the same time. And it was awesome. I could start that house. And then when I did it again with Mike the following year, we were looking around for another houses. I brought him to a lot of houses again to check out. And we finally decided on one. They covered closing costs. I think it was like 90% of closing costs, and it was 0% down again. So I didn't have to pay anything except for like, you know, a couple K for what was left of the closing costs that time. Basically, the money they handed me in a check last time, I used to cover whatever was left of the closing costs this time. And so basically, 2 houses back to back, I've done $0 out of pocket. Essentially. Obviously, in the moving process and stuff like that, you pay a little bit in the furniture. But in the actual purchase of the house, no money down, 2 of the houses, and they're both in places where the rentals can essentially cover the mortgage day by day. That's one of the challenges of doing 0% down is if you want to rent. Obviously, your mortgage is a little bit higher month to month because you're not putting that 20% down. So you really got to find a house that has a good possibility for the rental to at least be equivalent to, if not more than, whatever your mortgage payment is going to be, which is tough in today's market with the house prices going up and things like that. And some of the finer, more modern houses, they can be really expensive, but they don't fetch rental prices at that price. So you really have to be strategic about what you buy. But yeah, it's been fantastic. If you are a physician or anyone in that space, I highly recommend using doctor's loans because they are awesome.
Yeah, it really just makes the deal so much sweeter because when you do find that property that where the rent is about equal to the mortgage, you're now getting a house for free where, you know, you're moving into it, but then once you move out and rent it out, the rent is covering the mortgage. You have an asset that's worth $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 that's going to appreciate, you know, 4 to 5% a year. You're building wealth, another $25,000, $30,000 right there. And your tenant's paying off that loan for you. So that 100% loan that you just took out, someone else is going to pay it for you once you get to start renting it out. So it really is an amazing way to build a portfolio and even just to get your first home. I mean, it's really, really good to be able to get in there with as little cash down as possible, use your cash towards other things, whether that's paying off student loans or investing it in other vehicles, and just taking advantage of this program that exists for medical professionals.
Oh yeah, it's terrific. And the limiting factor is what you said initially is that you're buying this as a primary home. So you have to basically live there for a year before you transfer it or transition it into a rental property. And so that's sometimes a limiting factor, especially if you have a family. You know, to be moving every year and doing this every year is a little bit challenging. But creative financing in and of itself is really important if you want to get into the real estate game and you don't have an enormous amount of cash sort of initially on hand. Because there's those type of loans, but there's sort of secondary homes that have low down payments. There's FHA loans as well for people that are not physicians, where you can get homes for as little as 3.5% down. There's things called DCSR loans. There's all sorts of different types of loans that you can take where you don't have to do the conventional 20% down. Now, if you can, and you have the cash to do the conventional 20% down, it's nice because then your monthly payment gets a lot lower, and there's other advantages to it. But all these ways are definitely easy ways to put your foot into the real estate game, get cash flow going, because really that's what the real estate investment game is about. It's about cash flow, but it's also about how much that house appreciates as it gets paid off, and when you flip it, years later, hopefully you get a lot of money into your pocket.
Yeah, it makes me think of, you'll run into these situations where a seller is selling a home and you're like, I wonder what they paid for it. And you look and, 25 years ago, they bought the house for like 20 grand. And you're like, what? That's what a car costs today.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like, I wish I was the guy that bought houses 25 years ago. Well, to be that person, it's buy as much real estate as you can today and just sit on it and wait. And then like someday when we're selling these properties for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, it's crazy to think that Atlanta will get to that point, but that's just kind of how real estate, the economy, and inflation works, is if you hold on to it long enough, that's going to happen.
And I really think it is in Atlanta. I think Atlanta is behind other cities with its inflation. I mean, this is my hometown. I really know it well. And if you invest in your hometown, you know sort of the areas that are next, if you have some sense for it. So you know where to invest. And if the same house that we bought was, in New York, if it was in LA, Chicago, the other big cities that I consider equivalent to Atlanta, it could have been twice the price. And in the area where we got it, I think it's going to appreciate quite a bit. So, yeah, absolutely. Doing those can definitely be profitable over long term because there's 25 years from now, and you could have kids in college, you could be thinking about retirement, and that could be the make or break point for whether or not you can pay off your kids' college, whether or not you can retire early, whether or not you can travel and be comfortable and things like that. So I definitely want to accumulate as big of a real estate profile as possible. Plus, outside of the finances, it's awesome to own homes. It's just there's something about it. Having a house or having multiple houses that's just pretty sweet. If you have one on rental and you have a whole family coming to visit you from out of town, you just block off those dates and it's like stay in my second house. It's pretty dope to be able to have those types of things. And so yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's a great avenue for investment for sure.
I love that. I want to circle back to something real quick that I've been meaning to ask you about. I've never asked you this. I've never worked with a buyer that's so good at finding these niche loan programs that just work perfectly for what they're trying to do. I mean, obviously I can connect people with lenders and provide great recommendations to get, really good service. But with you in particular, I remember, you'll have times where you're like, well, I just found this other loan with this other guy and it's this. I'm like, how are you finding this stuff? Do you have any tips for people of like, if they're looking to buy a home, how they can locate like the best possible deal as far as the mortgage goes?
Yeah, so the starting is having a good realtor because Mike introduced me to a couple of good people initially. Like Brian, who I think did another one of these episodes, he gave me a lot of good initial information. And then I did a lot of research myself. And honestly, social media has made a huge difference in this field. That was one thing that made me understand that I'm becoming more of a dad and, thinking about my future investment is my Instagram reel. It used to be like people partying and, girls and things like that. And now it's like people talking about houses and mortgages and different types of loans. And so, I was able to network really well because, a lot of contacts in the real estate space and talk to a lot of people that are knowledgeable about this space. And then I got a lot of good advice from social media. So when I heard about a new type of loan, I would go, research it and look into it. Like recently, I've been hearing a lot about these BRRRR programs where, that's more of a construction to permanent type loan, and then people refinance and get a lot of cash out, which sounds awesome. And I never would have known about this if I wasn't following these people on social media. So I start, trying to follow more and more people that seem like they invest a lot in real estate or knowledgeable about real estate. Because really, at the end of the day, it's all about education and knowing your options. And if you ask the right questions, you can get the right answers, and you can get houses for free, even 2 of them. It's pretty awesome.
It is truly amazing. So let's talk a little bit about how you are generating income from these properties. Because again, you're very creative. Like you think outside the box. And I know you've dabbled in a couple different areas. Talk to us about your experience with short-term rental, medium-term rental, and the different strategies you've tried.
Yeah, absolutely. So because I got these houses, for 0% down, like I said, the average monthly payment, the average monthly mortgage is a little bit higher than typical for these houses, because you're not putting that 20% down. And so as a result, classic long-term rental, not as great as an option. Could theoretically, if you find the right tenant that's willing to pay the right amount, and I've had people offer to pay close to the right amount, but at the same time, you're not going to be generating a lot of positive cash flow for a month-to-month basis. And so really the key for me is if you have that situation where you're at a low down payment and you're trying to generate more cash flow than normal, is to furnish the house. You got to furnish the house. And you can do it pretty cheap nowadays. If you use an Amazon or thrift stores or places like Wayfair, you can really furnish a home for cheap. And we ordered the furniture and I did all the building construction and all of the, building and moving and all that furniture stuff myself. I didn't hire a handyman or anything like that. Because it really was, it's about, your cash flow and how much cash you have in your pocket at the end of the day. And initially, when we were renting it out, and we were doing short-term rental or long-term rental for the cleanings, we did those ourselves because that's even more money straight into your pocket before you have a more established system. But you got to furnish the place. And then the answer is typically in short-term or medium-term rental. And for those, it's really about knowing your area, what's around your area, why are people coming to this area, why are they staying there. And so the most recent house that we've converted into a rental is really close to the hospital system. One of the, Wellstar is like a growing hospital system in Atlanta, and their biggest flagship hospital is out in Marietta, where we've acquired a house. And so there's a lot of traveling medical professionals, not just travel nurses, but there's travel radiology techs, there's travel pharmacists, there's travel physicians, there's travel administrators that are related to Wellstar Health System. And so there's a lot of people coming in and out of the area that are looking for months at a time. That's sort of the hallmark or the main part of medium-term rental, but also there's a lot of families in that area. And when they have damage to their house or they have flood damage or they want to renovate their house and they're working through insurance tries to relocate them. So if they're a family that had a 4-bedroom house, think about them covering for 4 hotel rooms. Each one is $200 a night. That hotel insurance company is paying $800 a night, to relocate them to a hotel room. See, the alternative is for them to go to a 4-bedroom house like you. And a number like that, let's say you drop it a little bit, $600 a night is a lot of money over the course of a month for your rental. That's more than double what you would make in a long-term rental program. And the insurance companies are desperate. They're like, we need to put someone in a house now because we are suffering keeping them in a hotel room. And the families are calling us over and over again saying, we don't want to live in a hotel. We want to live in a house. We're a family. We want to be together. We need a yard. We want to put our dog somewhere. We be able to take our kids. We want to be close to the school. There's all these things that they need sort of as a family that a hotel doesn't provide. And so having a 4-bedroom house in that area that you can rent off to the insurance companies, it's a win-win-win for everyone. The insurance company gets what they want, the family gets what they want, and you're getting a much higher payment month by month so that you can have positive cash flow for your house. So that's the medium-term option, which I think in the area that I am is much better over sort of the winter months where it's a little bit slow, because where we are is also a hot spot for baseball tournaments, which I'm starting to learn a lot more about recently. In that Marietta area north of Truist Park. And so as it turns into the spring and summer, then it becomes a much better opportunity for short-term rental because there's families coming in and they're bringing their son to their baseball tournament and they want to rent the house for like a week at a time. And they say, hey, we might even want to do 2 weeks depending on how well our son does in the baseball tournament. And so, they're starting to reserve it way in advance through the entire summer as it continues to be baseball season. So I've kind of flexed the house to be, a medium-term rental over the winter months, and then I kind of block out some months over the summer and do short-term rental where I know I'm going to profit even more, where it's more predictable that I'm really going to have a lot of cash in the pocket at the end of those months. And then towards the end of the year, when it becomes winter and baseball season slows down, I'll probably go back to the insurance companies and medium rentals, because that's when the hospitals are busy. So more traveling nurses need to come in, more traveling physicians. And so just knowing your area, knowing which one you want to do can be really helpful. But I think the key more than anything, if you want higher month to month, is you got to furnish the house.
Do you ever show up to the baseball games and start rooting for their kids? So you're like, I need that second week of rent, baby.
I have not yet, but that's a great idea. But in line with that, I've been really thinking about, people will add to their house in ways that are kind of palatable or favorable to the clientele that they think they're going to have. So like, if you're a baseball family coming to this house, what do you want in the home that would make it better for you? It means that more baseball families would want to stay in our property. And so I've thought about this. Why do you put like a batting cage in the backyard, or put like, a pitching fence or whatever? I never played baseball very much growing up, although I am a fan. So I have a couple of friends that are more into baseball. We have a mutual friend in Nuge that's like obsessed. I might like give him a call and be like, hey, if you were staying at a house, for a baseball tournament, what would you want in that house that would really make a difference for you at the end of the day? And thinking like that can make you can charge more, and you can, get higher occupancy rates, which those are your two goals. As a short-term rental person, it's cash per night and occupancy rates. And if you can really maximize those two, you can really have a really profitable Airbnb. But no, I've not been to a baseball game yet. I probably should.
So one thing I'm curious about with these medium and short-term rentals, when you go through platforms like Airbnb or some of the other ones, I know they take a cut. And I've heard of other medium-term investors creating channels to attract clients directly to them, either through like establishing relationships with hospitals or whatever you can do to get that flow of clientele. Is that something you've gone through at all?
Absolutely. And it took me a while to figure out what those channels were, because I kind of started off with the main three, which are Airbnb for obviously short-term rental, but you can do medium-term rental through them as well. But then the two main ones for medium-term rental would just be Furnish Finder and Zillow. Zillow obviously is most ideal for long-term rental, but plenty of people reached out to me for medium-term rental opportunities. A lot of time it's the company that the client is working with. For example, in the same baseball house, I got a message from a company that helps house Braves players. And they're like, I have a player from the Atlanta Braves that wants to stay somewhere for a couple of months. Unfortunately, the dates overlapped in a way where we couldn't do it, but those people will reach out. But then I contacted her afterwards, and it's really about networking and being a little bit more forward with some of these companies that reach out on behalf of clients. And I said, hey, this is my address, this is my number, this is my information. Keep my house in mind if you have any clients in the future, and we can go, directly through us, because Zillow and Furnish Finder don't take a cut. It's just Airbnb that takes a cut, but you want to be at the top of their list. And a lot of them have been saying in the area that I am, they need houses and they don't have enough houses, so they're very happy to have my information. At the same time, I had one client that stayed for a couple of months through State Farm, because their house got flooded, and so they needed to be relocated, and they were in a hotel, and it was that exact situation where it was a win for everyone. And the first month I kind of didn't charge them, I think, as much as I would. The next month I actually increased their rent. Everyone was okay with it. The next month I increased it more, and everyone was still okay with it. And I was like, I don't know where these insurance companies draw the line. I might do it again. Next time, keep going up with the payment. But I'd really increased it a lot, to the point where I was very cash flow positive in a house where I didn't think it was possible. So it was really awesome. And they rented it during some of the slowest months when it comes to Airbnb. So it was really advantageous that way. But I had found them through Furnish Finder. So Furnish Finder, to put your house on there, you have to have a membership for about $100 a year. That's really about it. Other than that, they don't take a cut. And I'm telling you, I get people that could overlap with my house like daily. I get a message, or at least like some notification that this person could potentially be interested in this area, either traveling nurses or traveling techs or things like that. Now, some of them are one person at a time. They're not a great fit for my 4-bedroom house, unless I tried to subdivide the house, but the house isn't set up great for it. And so I'm usually waiting for those families with pets and children that want to stay for a prolonged period of time. And it's not just even traveling healthcare. I mean, there's traveling engineers, and there's like a traveling water construction worker. Like, I had all these different people, and there's traveling fields for all sorts of things that need a place to stay. But when I did the State Farm one with the house that was flooded, I contacted State Farm, and I was like, hey, make sure that our house is on your list moving forward. And they told me about the company that does the payments, that they kind of have like a third-party service called Sedgwick. And so they're like, hey, call them. And so I called them, because you're relying on the client to call the insurance company for your payment. But I was like, I don't want to bug the client. If I'm calling daily to get my payment, and I'm doing it a month in advance because I'm being aggressive and I just want the money in my pocket. But I don't want to call my client every day, a month in advance. The rent's not technically due, so I'm calling the insurance company. I got the direct number and calling them every day, and they're paying me a month early on the rent, which is awesome, just because they want me to stop calling more so than anything else. But also, I was able to figure out that third-party company, Sedgwick, so now they have me on the list for their particular city. So if they ever have another person, even if it's another insurance company, they can make sure that they sort of recommend my house to them for the medium short-term rental. And then it's awesome. Once it's set in stone, they say for 3 or 4 months at a time, I don't have to do anything. There's no cleanings. There's really not that much handiwork. They're usually someone that owns a house and respects a house. And so we had a small issue with them, and they made sure to call me immediately, and they ask how that we can resolve the issue instead of just destroying the house and sort of not letting you know. So they're really high quality clients as well. And like I said, you get your payments way in advance, so it's really awesome.
I think that's such a good point too, is just to realize that like the people paying your rent in these cases, it's either the insurance provider like State Farm or someone that they're working with, or in the case of a traveling professional, it's often the employer, right? Like it's Wellstar that's paying your lease. It's the engineer's company. It's not the actual person renting it out. And so it's like, how much of a better tenant can you get than that, right? They're not going to like miss out on payments.
Exactly. They don't miss payments. They're really good. They pay early. And those are the people who you want to be in their phone book listed for that city anytime they have another client that they want in that area, for sure.
I'm like blown away with how knowledgeable you've become about this strategy, because a lot of it is something you can't read in a book, right? Or maybe not even learn from social media, even though there's a lot of good information out there. How much of this did you know going into it when you were buying the home versus how much have you just had to kind of learn along the way?
I knew nothing going into it. 2 houses ago, when we first moved to Atlanta, I basically knew nothing about real estate or real estate investments. I didn't even know that there was such a thing called closing costs. I had no idea how much realtors charged. I didn't know anything about short-term or long-term rental other than the fact that I had booked Airbnbs before. And then I started looking through the houses with you. I learned a lot in that process. You definitely educated me quite a bit. And then you referred me to other contacts. I learned them. I started doing a bunch of things on social media, but then I just read and put in the time. And that's, really what it's about. Like anything else, if you put in the time and do the research, you can really figure out all the different opportunities, because all the resources and information are available now online if you're willing to put the time and sort of read through them. And then every time I have one of these situations, like you said, I call up the insurance company and I have the conversation with them and I ask a lot of the questions. And people are generally really nice in real estate. Especially in the situations that I'm talking about. Long-term rental, when it's client dependent and you have a client that maybe loses his job or isn't able to make payments, that's when you get into uncomfortable situations in real estate. But the short-term rentals, the medium-term rentals, the insurance companies, everyone is really friendly and knowledgeable and able to really to educate you and help you understand a bunch of different things that are relevant to real estate. I remember when I bought the second home with you, interest rates were initially pretty low, and then they kind of increased over the course of the month. And so when I wanted to finalize, he's like, "Oh, this is what interest rates are now." And I almost backed out. I was like, "What the heck? You can't just change the interest rate on me. This is nonsense. Is this a part of the process?" So I called Mike, and I called all the people that Mike had referred to me, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just what happens. If you don't lock down your interest rate initially, it's going to increase." And I was like, "Oh, I got you. He's not screwing me over. That's just literally what happened to everyone in the country over the past month." So then I moved forward with the property, and I was really happy to do it. And then, I saw this short-term or this medium-term rental reel on Instagram. It's probably where it first started, where I really got introduced to it. Someone that said he was doing what they call corporate housing or whatnot, and it looks like they were going really well. And I was like, well, this is right by the hospital, so that should be a good option. And then my wife actually did travel nursing, and so she knew a little bit about what the process was like and some of the companies that were involved. She's told me to initially use Furnished Finder, and so that was really helpful because Furnished Finder has probably been my main source of finding a lot of these clients. And so if you know the right places to start and you keep digging, and that's basically what I've been doing, is just keep digging and digging and digging, I think you can get the right answers that help you go in the right direction.
That's super good. One thing I did want to ask about, and you kind of touched on it, but a lot of people when they're getting into this space, they're looking for passive income. They want to quit their job. They want to retire early. And real estate is not the most passive type of investing. Bonds, stocks, mutual funds is going to be way more passive, right? It does take some time. And I feel like on the spectrum of short, medium, long-term rental, the shorter the stay, the more the work. And you talked about building the furniture yourself, doing some of the cleanings yourself. How passive is it? And do you see yourself continuing down this route of being more DIY and hands-on to get more money? Or do you think as you scale, you'll start hiring more of that out?
Yeah, medium and short-term rental, not as passive as long-term. Obviously, someone just sitting in your house for years, sort of paying you income month by month. So there's a little bit of effort required on a month-by-month process. But there's people that do it and make it a lot more passive, doing what you're saying. They can automate the process. They have virtual secretaries. They have front ends that sort of take care of a lot of the work, that synchronize all the different platforms that they use. And they have a handyman and a cleaning lady, and all that comes out of pocket. And so if you scale, you have to do it. I can't do what I'm doing. If I had 10 homes all in the Atlanta area, there's no way I could do all the cleaning, all the handyman work, and then all the communication with all the clients. And so I would definitely have to start using some of these companies. But I love the way I did it. Doctors don't really retire. I love my job. I do like my job, and I'm probably going to work, indefinitely. I might slow down to a different position where I'm working less and less. So it's never been my goal to be in early retirement, although I know that, that's the financial goal for a lot of other people. But I'd like for it to be an option. I would like to have enough cash in my pocket where I could think about it. I'd like to have cash in my pocket so that I can send my kid to college. I'd like to have enough cash so I can buy a bigger house eventually, or that I can buy all the things that I need, or, get a nice car eventually. Having money is advantageous because, and the main reason I've really thought about this is that families are expensive, and I have a wife, and I love her, and I have a son, I love them, and I want to have a bigger family, and it costs a lot of money when you think about daycare and education. If you want to go the private route, and traveling with your family, doing trips every year, really keeping them together, and more so than anything, family is a really big expense if you want to do it in a way where everyone's happy, and hopefully you keep your wife with you, because that's the most costly thing you can do is leave your wife, lose your wife at the end of the day. And so you want to keep everyone smiling, and keep your kids happy, and it really requires having enough cash to do that. So having supplementary income streams, hopefully will help that happen. Hopefully help me keep my family together, keep my family happy, keep us traveling, and keep us doing the things that we want to do.
I love that. So sort of along those same lines, what's sort of your vision moving forward? What do you see as far as your overall investing strategy, real estate investing? Are you going to double down on some of these medium-term rentals now that you're really getting to understand the market? Just buy houses around this baseball field? Or are you going to diversify? Because fun fact about Ovais, he will send me the most random stuff. I'll wake up to a text that's like, what do you think about this land in Kennesaw? And I'm like, yeah, it looks kind of cool. Let's check it out. And then the next day it's like, what do you think about this lake house? Which I love because, I'm similar. Larissa and I, eventually we want a lake house and a beach house and a cabin house and all that. So we love the diversity. But what's sort of your long-term vision for your real estate portfolio?
Oh, you know me, I'm already looking for the next one for sure. I mean, these past two have gone so well that I really just want to keep moving. And I love houses. I love buying them and looking at them and evaluating them. The whole part of it. There is some type of secondary benefit that's not money that I can't explain. But I'm definitely looking into it, and I want to try some different routes now that I've learned about all these different things. So I definitely could just buy a house in the same area, but I've thought more about building. So I've done a lot more research recently, and I've met with some construction groups like Excel Construction in Alpharetta, and there's a place called Figure Construction that's in Buckhead, Copper Construction. So there's a couple that I'm looking at for sure. But finding the right plot of land is really hard. So I'd found one recently in Kennesaw that I was interested in looking at. It was two plots of land separate to each other, and you can do what's called a construction to permanent loan, where the loan pays for not only the land cost but the construction of the house, and at the end it converts it into kind of a permanent 30-year loan or whatnot. So it becomes more like your classic housing loan. And so with those, you can kind of get that version of it as a doctor loan also. So you're like pay 0% down, get your land, build your house, and then either sell it or convert it into a rental property. And for the actual price of the home, you can get it for much cheaper. So think about it, buying a house for $100,000 or $200,000 less if you build it, but you have to deal with all the pains of the building process. So hopefully you have a good contractor or whatnot. So I sent the land to Mike because like he said, I do this a lot. And we have very opposite schedules. He's an early morning guy. We're late night people. So I send him at like 2 or 3 a.m. and then he wakes up at 6 and he's like, oh, there's a couple of messages from Ovais over the course of the night. And so I sent it to him and he's like, you got to go look at the land. Like this, it's cheap. It looks great, but you got to go put eyes on it, walk through it. And I have a busy job, especially on my week work. So it's really hard to do these, but I was like, yeah, no, I definitely have to do it. You're right. And I looked in and this land, it was like 50 feet in, then deep incline river. It was almost unbuildable. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to go back to the drawing boards. This is not the land where I wanted to build it. And I was really thankful that Mike pushed me to go look at it. But that's kind of the direction I was leading to next, is I'd really like to try building because I think that there's a lot more money, especially short-term money in building. If you can build and flip and sell, you can be a lot more profitable in the short term. But that is a lot slower of a process. I really want to find the perfect piece of land, the perfect contractor, the perfect design. You have to design the home and everything relevant to the land. So it's really slow term. And so in the same time, I'm obviously still looking for properties. And, there's the primary doctor loan process that I can still use, but it really requires moving. And I'm not sure my family is 100% ready for another moving process right now. But there are sort of secondary home loans. So if you get like a vacation home in a spot by a lake or by the mountains or something like that, which are typically great short-term rental spots, you can get it for reduced down payments, typically around 10%. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking, is maybe to do like one of these vacation homes, either by the water, in the mountains, convert it into an Airbnb eventually, so that can be profitable, and then we can live there sometimes as well. That's totally legit, totally legal, but also a really profitable way to get another house on the portfolio, and at the same time continue to look for that land and build model moving forward. And if I do the land and build model, or actually not for land and build, the other thing that I'm looking for, I guess I'm looking at way too many things at the same time, is what I mentioned earlier, that BRR thing. If you actually find a house that you can renovate in a good area and you build it you renovate it, and then you refinance it through the bank. That's one way to actually get a lot more cash in your pocket and then start renting it at a good rate moving forward. So there's a lot of opportunities. You just have to be aware of all of them and keep looking, I think, until you find one that you feel like, hey, this is the right project moving forward, and then sink your teeth in, complete the deal.
I love that. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm always looking at real estate. I really love small multifamily. I've been looking for BRRRR deals as well. I just think that flippers are pretty scared right now, money's more expensive. So there's more flip opportunities. You can actually get a property that needs work for a reasonable amount. You're not paying like full market value like you were the past couple of years. But yeah, you reminded me of a deal that I saw that was really cool. It was a house in Smyrna for like $325 for a 3-2 home that
Is this when we looked together?
We might have. I can't remember if I sent it to you. It needed a lot of work, but I was like, you could flip this house and probably sell it for $500 and make, 40, 50K after all fees are paid for and all that. But the kicker is there was 2 lots included with the home. So I was like, if you even break even on the flip, you've got 2 lots that you can now build on or just sell for cash, and like that's your true profit. So I was like, this is really, really cool. And it was only about 5-10 minutes away from where we live. So my fiance and I drove by just to look at it, and it was kind of the same thing. The lots were like heavily, heavily, heavily wooded, very, very sloped. I didn't even talk to a builder about it, but I was like, this seems like a nightmare to try to build on. So yeah, land is a little tricky, but I feel like if you find the right one, you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, buildable lots, so rare and so valuable, especially in a valuable area. They're super hard to find. I'm definitely looking. If you find some, hit me up. Let me know. Absolutely. Send them my way for sure.
Well, cool. I feel like we've covered a lot of really fun topics. I didn't even realize how far along you were with like this medium term. Like you're doing this at a high level for real. Yeah. And I think this is the other stories that I've heard in regards to medium term rental are all the same. It started with one house in one area, and then I met this one person at this hospital, and they had more of a demand for intermediate housing or whatever, and then they just kind of went from there. And I think it speaks to the level of experience being key, right? Like you're an action guy, right? If you get an idea, you're like, okay, I know enough that I'm going to pursue this and figure the rest out along the way. And when I think about your story and your successes, if anyone can learn from it, that's one of the biggest takeaways for me is just take action. Like you'll figure out the rest later. And real estate in particular is very forgiving, right? You can overpay a little bit for a house. You can have more repairs than you expected. As long as you stay in the game, hold on to the property and just keep going, it's going to appreciate over time. You're going to get higher rent over time. You're going to be able to refinance into a better rate at some point. Like it only gets better from there. So anyone who's interested in starting to invest or getting into one of these new strategies, do a little bit of the research up front and then just go for it. I mean, would you agree?
What I like to say is I've never heard someone say they regret buying a piece of real estate. There was someone that I talked to that was a contractor where he bought 2 houses in 2008 during the crash. And he's like, we weathered the crash. We went through it, and 10 years later, we still sold them for twice the price. You know what I mean? And just like any other investing, I hate guessing the market. And that's what all the financial professionals will tell you is don't try to guess the market when it's high or low and everything. Everything cost averages over time as long as you're constantly doing it. Even with the stock market, don't try to buy low and sell high. You consistently buy month by month by month, and it cost averages over the long term. And then over the course of 10, 20 years, it on average appreciates 10%. It's the same thing with real estate. If you keep buying, keep accumulating, that stuff is going to appreciate if you look at the big picture over the long term. And hopefully you make money at the end of the day.
But no, it's so true. I talk to a lot of people that are looking to buy or sell, obviously, and a lot of them become clients and they transact and some don't. And I know people that have been saying they want to buy something for years now, but there's always, the market's too high, the prices are too high, the rates are too high. There's always going to be some challenge, but there's also always an opportunity. And so, for example, when we were looking last and rates were going up, it was like, yeah, that kind of sucks, but then we had more negotiating power. We were able to get closing costs covered. So you just like play to your advantages, take the disadvantages in stride, and just keep accumulating, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, you got to know your budget, of course, within reason. You got to know what you're looking for. But when you find the house that you like, I'm an incredibly impatient, do it immediately type of person. That's just my personality. It always has been. And so when if I find a house that I like and I feel like it's the right one, I'm going to go ahead and try to move quickly and try to secure the house. The market's competitive. Even in the slow market, the market's competitive. So that house might not be there in a week, and someone else could be profiting from it, enjoying from it. And so when you find that house, just make a move.
I love it. Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and transition to our last segment here and start wrapping this up. All right. This is our final 4. So these are the same 4 questions that we ask to every guest just to get to know you a little bit better. Number 1, what is your morning routine?
Oh, wow. Work day or non-work day is really tough. My work days, I work as a neurohospitalist, which means I'm inpatient in the hospital, and the weeks on, I work basically 7 days on and 7 days off. The 7 days I'm on, I do 12-hour shifts, 7 hours straight. So I work 84 hours in a week minimum. It's usually a lot longer than that with the time I have to do before and after the hospital. So on those weeks, my morning routine is roll out of bed, brush my teeth, put on scrubs, get in the car. It is literally that minimal. It takes like 5 minutes from waking up to get in the car. I get to the parking lot, I sleep for like 5 minutes in the car, and then I get out. And I'm not even a coffee person, so I do all those shifts. I don't drink coffee for the week that I'm on work, unless it's like I'm a social drinker of coffee, basically. On the off weeks, I sleep until like noon. And then I slowly get up with my family. We all like have lunch together. Check my Zillow, page for a couple of what's available, manage the Airbnbs or whatnot, and then, go out to dinner with friends and enjoy my time. Although we're usually traveling in our off time, we travel a lot. But I have a very quick and dirty morning routine.
I love it. Why are you not a coffee drinker? Are there any like health reasons or?
No, I mean, my stomach gets a little bit sensitive, but honestly, it's just like, I don't know. I don't feel like I need it. I like my job. I get amped doing my job, and I usually just get going. I'm more of just like a midday napper. At some point, I'll find a part of the hospital, some couch here, some chair there, and I'll take like a 20, 30-minute nap breather. That's my coffee, essentially, and I just keep going.
That's amazing. All right, number 2, what is your biggest goal for this year?
Get another property. 2023 is the year we're talking about, right? Yeah. So I want to add one more, and some people that are full real estate, they're doing like multiple properties a year. That's too much considering my schedule, my family, my job. So my goal is usually one property a year. So I just want to add one more piece of property, whether it's land, a house, or an investment, or starting something this year. That's the goal.
That's all it takes. Like, if you literally just do that for 10 years, you own 10 properties. That's a whole freaking portfolio.
Yeah, that's
you're going to be in
enough.
good shape. I love it. And then number 3, what is your favorite thing to do in Atlanta?
Other than spend time with my family, which is probably my favorite thing to do. I hate to say this, but we go out and party a lot. I mean, I still do with a lot of my brothers and friends and cousins. I grew up in here in Atlanta, so we have a big group. So every once in a while, I take the kid and I throw him in the grandparents' house, and I say, take care of this thing for 48 hours. And then we go out and we either, go to a nice dinner, and then we go out to, bars or clubs or anything like that afterwards. And that's typically our weekend to ourselves. It's that or travel. I mean, that's not really an Atlanta answer, but we travel quite a bit. But we go down to Savannah, we'll go to Lake Lanier, we'll go to Allatoona or something like that. And that's typically our free weekends or times.
That's so good. I think I saw you guys went to Nobu recently.
Yeah, Nobu was really good in Atlanta. We went for one of my cousin's birthdays. It was good, but also like they were fresh and starting, and so like a 2-hour dinner turned into a 4-hour dinner. They added a bunch to our bill and stuff, but it was good. It was good food. I do recommend it.
All right, solid Nobu review. And last one, if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about you, where can they connect with you?
So come to the hospital as a patient. No, I'm just kidding. My email is oviinam9@gmail.com. If you ever have any questions or real estate opportunities, feel free to hit me up. And that's my contact info.
Love it. All right. Well, that is it for today's episode. I'm blown away. I work with this guy and didn't even realize like what a high level he's operating at when it comes to some of these real estate investing strategies. So I'm sure that anyone listening to this got a ton out of it. Thank you to everyone who made it this far. We really appreciate anyone that is out there listening to this or supporting us. Still a very young, early, new podcast, and I'm sure we're going to have Ovais back because every time I talk to him, I learn something new. Like I'm learning right here now. So like I got to have you back on just so I know what you're looking for and I can send you the right properties. But yeah, he's such a smart guy. He learns so fast. I'm sure that anyone who made it this far learned something along the way. If you enjoyed the show, please do leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do have the video version on there if you want to watch along or listen in your car. We'll be posting these once a week and would love any feedback or comments that you all have. If you are looking to buy, sell, or invest in Atlanta real estate, you can get in touch with me. I'm on Instagram at RealMikeLacey, or you can email me, MikeLacey@AtlantaFineHomes.com. Thank you again. I hope everyone has an amazing week.